Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully you've had a chance to grab a cookie. They're from Charlie Cookies. Yeah, with Aerial Clinical Services. Okay, great, thank you. And thanks to our workforce and our partners for hosting us today. We do have a number of folks online. So when we get to the Q&A, we'll kind of toggle back and forth between our hosts and online questions. This is our fourth out of 15 community meetings across the state. Week before last, we were in Durango and Alamosa. I was sharing with this gentleman after 15. Don't ask me where we've been, but it's beautiful seeing. We were spent just a little bit of time in Durango, but always happy to be here in Grand Junction. So I'm Cher Hobbins. I'm the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Communications Officer for the Department of Labor and Employment. So I'm not over the paid family leave division, but I have a team of communications professionals. We work closely with our policy team, and we really created this in-person and virtual outreach tour as a way to engage with you across the state. Give us your hard questions. You know, we're ready to just have an open dialogue. We don't have all the answers. Right now, Colorado is only one of 11 states that has a paid family leave program. And we've had to lean on those other states for writing rules and regs and policies. And as you probably know, we are brand new into implementing this voter approved program. So if we don't have an answer for you, we will do our best to follow up with you. Before we get going, I'll introduce my colleague, Evan Grimes, is joining remotely. Teeny tiny up there. And so Evan and I will actually jointly be presenting the content today. He is our policy expert. He's the one who's been working with our policy team on writing rules and regs. So I will likely defer a lot of your questions to Evan, but again, let's make this an open two-way conversation. And to our folks on the Zoom, just if you could chat in your questions, but we'll hold everything until the end. Jessica Smith is our communications manager, Oscar's our creative director, and Josh is our branch manager for paid family leave. If you're familiar with the ballot, it was approved by 57% of Colorado voters in 2020. It mandated the Department of Labor to stand up this program. We already have 6 divisions, 4 of which are regulatory. And so if you're familiar with unemployment insurance, we're really trying to mimic the processes and the interface with employers as closely as we can with the UI division. And so we'll get into the mechanics of that. And then we'll go through some of the timelines, where we are with building our technology system, what employers need to know. If folks are here from local governments, there is an opt-out option for local governments, but only local governments. So we'll get into a few of those specifics. So let's just go ahead and get started. So I kind of went over what we'll be talking about, what is family, timeline, when can we use family, funding, premiums, private plans, a lot of interest from our employer community around private plans. We're in the middle of both our benefits rulemaking and our private plan rulemaking. We've not set a date yet for the public comment hearing for private plans. That's to be determined. That will be in a couple of weeks. So you will have an opportunity to weigh into our proposed rules, which are on our website currently through that public comment period. Again, we'll talk about local governments, and then certainly we hope to leave most of our time for your questions. So as I said, family was passed by 57% of Colorado voters. So it does, again, we're one of 11 states currently. It ensures all workers have access to paid leave, and then we'll get into a little bit of the, caveats to that, including self-employed and gig workers. So our primary focus right now is on private employers, special districts, local governments, those who need to start preparing to start either deducting premiums if you're participating in the state plan, or you just need to know what is a private plan that must be at or above the state's offering. So we'll get into that in a minute as well. It's contributed, if you're a participant in the state program, it's split between the employee and the employer to 0.9% of the employee's wages. We do have a calculator on our website at family.colorado.gov. So you can get a sense for, if you're paying a worker this salary, what the joint deduction would be, and then what the benefit amount would be as well. So speaking into a little more detail about the timelines, I mentioned building technology systems. So we have right now, we're in the middle of building our premium system. So as I mentioned with unemployment insurance, you will create an account as an employer. Even if you have a private plan, you will still need to interface with the department. And if you're a local government, you will still need to interface with the department. So you will need to create an account similar to if you manage your UI premiums online. You're creating an account quarterly, you're submitting your premiums to the department, and you are uploading your wage reports, again, similar to unemployment insurance. So right now our focus is on building this employer premium system. We have a soft launch plan for later this year. We'll also be sharing, is it in the handouts? A way for you to test the system early if you so choose to participate as an early access employer or a local government. So the plan is soft launch the last quarter of this year. January 2023 is when those payroll deductions will begin and wage reports. And those will be due no later than April 30th. And that includes a grace period. So while we are deploying the premium system, we will also start building the benefit system. Right now, they are two different systems. So we were really hopeful that employers can engage with the department through one portal, but it will be separate from the UI portal. You'll go to family.colorado.gov. You'll log into the portal there. The system is My Family Plus Employer, and that will take you to the entire account setup process. Again, this is still in development, so we don't have a mock-up or a prototype to show you, but that's coming this fall. And then, of course, we start paying benefits in January of 2024. These timelines and almost everything you hear today is prescribed in law. So while we do have some flexibility with rules and regs, which is why you do rulemaking, is to provide clarity to what's maybe missing or gray in statute, these timelines were specifically spelled out in the ballot that voters approved. Okay, so when can a covered worker use family? It is, the traditional newborn bonding with a child, but it does include some other circumstances, including arrangements for military deployments and safe leave. These provisions aren't necessarily unique to paid family leave programs. And a lot of the state, as I said, what was in the state law was mirrored after what has been in effect in a number of other states for some time. So we talked about funding. Again, this is a shared contribution between the employee and the employer who choose to participate based on headcount. And Evan will get into how we're looking at headcount based on a calendar year. But essentially, an employer with 9 or fewer only remits the employee contribution, so the 0.45%. 10 or more, you're remitting both the employee and the employer contribution. We also have some questions in about, well, what if the employer is out of Colorado but has some workers in the state? So Evan will get into that in a minute as well. Self-employed, as I said, can participate, so they're only remitting their portion. Local governments, we'll get into how they can opt out, but essentially, even if a local government chooses to opt out entirely, they may still collect the employee's portion of that if they choose, not required. There's really 3 ways that a local government can participate. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. And you can also have a private plan. So these are self-insured. So perhaps you're a private employer, you already have a very robust plan in place. Let's say you have short-term disability, you have up to 12 weeks of leave. So potentially you have a plan already in place that meets or exceeds what the state plan will be. You will need to provide a surety bond. And again, we'll get into when we talk about rules and participation to the mechanics of that. Okay, I think this is my last one before I turn it over to Evan. And so the premium rate is fixed through 2024. After that, the division director can set the premium rate. Again, within UI, we take a snapshot of the balance of the state's unemployment insurance trust fund at the end of every state fiscal year at the end of June. That balance in the trust fund or solvency determines what the premium rate will be for the next year. So this will follow that same path. So the rate is capped at 1.2%, however, and anything above that would be going through the Capitol and need to get passed by the General Assembly. And I don't know the states in particular, maybe Evan does. There's some evidence that shows in other states with paid family leave programs, they've actually decreased the premium rate. And with that, over to you, Evan.
All right, thanks, Cher. First, I want to dive into to the weeds on a few issues, but first, regarding the definition of wages under the FAMLI Act. We are in the process of updating our rules to make family even simpler for our employer community. And so to that end, we intend to use the same calculation of wages as employers are accustomed to using for our unemployment insurance system. And so wages subject to family premiums will be the same thing as wages subject to unemployment insurance. Now, premiums are paid on wages up to the federal Social Security wage cap. And so as that figure changes from year to year, so will the family premiums cap. And then just a note, you can find a list of payments that are considered wages on our website at a link that's provided in this deck. And in any event, I suspect Jessica or Michelle will drop that in the chat for everybody as well. Next, I want to talk about employee headcount. Again, as Cher mentioned, the reason this is important is because it determines an employer's premium liability. If an employer has more than 10 or more employees, then the employer has to remit to the state 0.9% of all their employees' wages and can withhold up to 0.45% of that from their employees' wages. If an employer has 9 or fewer employees, then the employer has to remit 0.45% every quarter and can withhold all of that from their employees' wages. So when it comes to counting how many employees you have, your employer count will be calculated once a year by counting the number of employees you have on your payroll during each of 20 or more calendar work weeks in the preceding year. And so employers that report having 10 or more employees who work during 20 more weeks in all of 2022 will be required to pay the employer share and the employee share of premiums for all 4 quarters in 2023. And just as a note, if an employee is on paid or unpaid leave, whether that's sick leave, medical leave, leaves of absence, disciplinary suspension, et cetera, they will have to be counted as being an employee during that calendar work week, during that week that they're on leave, so long as the employer expects the employee to return to active employment. And so next, I want to talk briefly about what FAMLI will look like for employees once it's up and running in 2024. Here you can see a few ranges of what premium deductions and benefit payments will look like based on an employee's wages. So when taking eligible family leave, employees will receive up to 90% of their wages in a wage replacement benefit based on a sliding scale, with benefits being capped at $1,100 per week. Now, this benefit cap is good through 2024. Starting in 2025, the benefit cap is 90% of the state average weekly wage. And so we will adjust the benefit cap annually. And then again, just a few reminders. We do have a benefit calculator on our website that will help families get a rough estimate of both their benefits and the deductions that they can expect to see. And again, the premiums are only paid on wages up to the federal Social Security wage cap. And so next we want to talk a little bit about exemptions from coverage versus meeting your obligations with a private plan. We want to emphasize that nearly every Colorado employer will be required to provide a robust paid family and medical leave program, whether they participate in the state-run family program or secure an equal or greater private or self-insured plan. The only employers who aren't required to provide an equal or greater paid leave program are federal employers with employees in Colorado, some railroad employers who aren't covered, and local government employers who vote to opt out, which I'll dive into shortly. But these 3 options that are laid out here, first, generally, private plans. Private employers will have the option to get their private plan approved by proving to the family division that their private plan will be in place by January 1, 2024 and provide equal or greater benefits to the employee than the family plan. Now, a subset of private plans is self-insured private plans. This is where an employer covers and meets its family obligations through a self-funded program as opposed to a policy through an insurance carrier. Self-insured plans will need to follow all the same rules and get approved by the division, just like the other private plans. But these self-funded employers will also need to submit a surety bond to the division in order for the division to have the assurance that the employer has the financial solvency to, in fact, pay benefits out of the self-funded private plan. And then finally, quick note on local governments. Local government employers are the only employers who can truly opt out of the family program and not be required to provide an equal or greater private plan. And next, I will dive more deeply into private plans. First, I want to emphasize that our private plan rules have not yet been filed. We have a working draft that we're very close to being able to file and expect to do that in the coming weeks. But we are still gathering feedback from various stakeholders in relation to those rules. In the meantime, we are offering some temporary guidance, but this is all subject to change once our rules are finalized. So in order to qualify for an approved private plan, employers must offer a plan to all employees that provide all of the same rights, protections, and benefits as Colorado's Family Paid Leave Program. So for example, in order to be approved, a private plan must offer at least the same number of weeks of benefits, offer at least the same level of wage replacement for each week of benefits, include no additional requirements or conditions, deduct the same amount or less from employees' paychecks as the state plan, cover all employees through the duration of their employment, and remain compliant with any additional requirements established by the family division. Now, we're in the process of drafting these with the goal of publishing them in the coming weeks. We understand, however, that employers need time to shop around and consider their private plan options. Therefore, we've created a temporary procedure whereby all Colorado employers will register and begin paying premiums in 2023, and those who secure an approved private plan effective on or before January 1st, 2024 will be issued a refund of any premiums paid in 2023, minus a private plan administrative fee. We anticipate opening up the private plan marketplace sometime between Q1 and Q3 next year, and we'll have deadlines in place for applications for private plans, which will likely be the end of October 2023 in order to get that refund. This will all be included in the forthcoming private plan rules that we're working on right now, and we will certainly be interested in hearing anybody's feedback on this in response to those rules once they are filed. But the biggest takeaway is that right now the plan is all private employers will pay premiums next year. And while those employers shop for private plans, they will continue to pay premiums and will be refunded those premiums once they secure a private plan that is approved and effective on or before 1/1/24. So quick, just sort of broadly on the rulemaking process, we do encourage all employers to provide comments on our proposed and adopted rules, either in writing or via public comment hearings. We have already held our public hearing for our proposed benefits rules. A recording of that session is available online. The public comment period has closed for those rules, and we anticipate publishing those within the next few days. And then finally, we will be scheduling our formal public hearing for private plan rules next. I would expect that update to come in the next few weeks shortly after we publish those proposed private plan rules. Next, I want to talk more specifically about local governments, who, unlike private employers, have some unique options when it comes to their participation in the family program. And so this next slide will show those three options. The first option is to simply participate fully in family. This means the local government agency agrees to pay the employer share of the premiums. That's 0.45% of wages if there's 10 or more employees, and 0% if there's fewer than 10. And the employer would also agree to remit the employees half of the premium, along with the wage data to the family division once a quarter. The second option is to decline all participation in FAMLI. Now, in order to decline participation in the FAMLI program, the local government's body must vote to do so. They must then notify the FAMLI division of their vote to decline participation. That decision is good for 8 years. If the local government wants to opt out beyond 8 years, it has to hold another vote to do so. And employees in this scenario would still have the option of voluntarily participating in the program, but they would be responsible for remitting 0.45% of their wages, along with wage reports to the FAMLI division on a quarterly basis. And the third option is to simply decline employer participation in FAMLI. Under this option, the local government would still technically decline coverage and would not be liable for any premiums, but it would choose to assist its employees who choose to opt in. And so for its employees that opt in, the local government would facilitate voluntary payroll deductions and remit the employees' premiums and wage data to the FAMLI division for that employee on a quarterly basis. So I will hand it back to Cher to wrap up, and then we will open up for some questions.
7, we do have a few questions about the recording of the webinar and the handouts. We will send out a follow-up email to today's presentation with the link that we dropped in the chat to everybody who signed in or everybody who joined the Zoom. And all of this content is available at our website, family.colorado.gov. You have some of the materials here today. Specifically, we're also developing right now an employer guide. So our focus has been on local governments because they do need to hold a vote between now and the end of the year, but we are nearly done with our employer guide, which will include a lot of these pieces that are required, including private plans. When those rules are complete, then we will update that accordingly. So those are in the map that you will receive. And then our last slide is just how to get in touch with us. So we have these postcards with a QR code that you can access. And please, if you have something that you didn't get answered today, you're certainly welcome to use any of those points of contact for us to follow up. We also have a newsletter that we deployed last year. I think to date, we've had just over 150,000 opens of this newsletter. So it is our most accessed communications tool. It comes out monthly. And we also have a recurring webinar series.